Imagine this, traveller of the silent cosmos, you did not arrive here by accident. Something in the dark between the stars brought you to this moment, a quiet question waiting to be heard. What if an object from another sun has brushed past our worlds, following a 1 in 20,000 path that glides past Venus, Mars and Jupiter with impossible precision? What are the odds that such a wanderer would drift so close and remain so silent, a fragment of another star? A light that blinked once and was gone. A thought passing through our solar system observing us in return. Stay a while, traveller. In the quiet expanse of our solar system, where planets drift like ancient lanterns around a single sun, nearly everything we observe shares the same origin story. From dust grains to worlds of stone and ice, all were shaped in the same swirling cradle of gas more than 4 billion years ago. Their motions echo a familiar rhythm circling the sun in orbits carved by gravity's patient hand. But 3I Atlas does not belong to that family. This small faint traveller entered our solar system carrying the chemical fingerprints of a distant stellar neighbourhood, a whisper from elsewhere. Only 2 interstellar objects had ever passed our way before Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019, each leaving more questions than clarity. And now, a third has arrived, moving with a speed and confidence that feel strangely deliberate, as though it had somewhere to be and knew precisely how to get there. At 61 kilometers per second, 3I Atlas glides through the inner planets without hesitation. Unlike our spacecraft, which rely on gravity assist to build velocity, this object seems to have been accelerated long before it crossed into our view. Its path brushing past Venus, Mars and Jupiter is so statistically improbable that researchers describe the odds as just 5%. A cosmic dart thrown from light years away should not by chance thread itself through 3 planetary flybys. And yet here it is performing what looks like a quiet tour of the solar system. Even its timing is uncanny. As it approaches perihelion on October 29, 2025, it will slip directly between Earth and the Sun, vanishing from our telescopes for several weeks. To a natural comet, this is an ordinary passage. But to an observer seeking to study Earth without being seen, such invisibility would be ideal. Perhaps it is coincidence, perhaps not. In science, coincidence is often where the most interesting questions begin. Its chemistry deepens the mystery. Most comets erupt with water, methane and organic compounds as sunlight warms them. 3I Atlas, however, releases carbon dioxide while withholding the usual signatures of ancient ice. The outgassing is strangely restrained, almost regulated, as if the object were managing its own temperature. Its shape, still unresolved, appears larger than previous interstellar visitors, massive enough to house complexity, yet subtle enough to disguise it beneath a coma of dust and pale light. Then there is the motion. Natural bodies follow trajectories dictated entirely by gravity, but this visitor exhibits faint persistent course, corrections, nudges that do not align with simple sublimation. These minute shifts suggest guidance, a quiet hand adjusting direction as it slips between worlds, and its retrograde path moving opposite the planets provides sweeping observational angles that prograde orbits cannot. If one intended to map a planetary system efficiently, this is the orbit one would choose. The possibilities diverge into several paths. Perhaps 3I Atlas is a reconnaissance probe, an instrument of a distant intelligence sent to evaluate emerging civilizations. Perhaps it is an archive from a long-extinct species drifting for millions of years until by extraordinary chance it wandered into our system. It might even be a node in a distributed network of artificial minds, a piece of a consciousness whose scale we cannot yet imagine. And yet it could still be nothing more than a natural comet, unusual but not impossible, shaped by forces older than stars themselves. Science does not need aliens to be wondrous. A rock from another sun is extraordinary enough. Whatever its origin, the implications ripple outward. If it is artificial, humanity stands on the threshold of a transformation as profound as learning fire or language. If it is natural, it still expands our understanding of how matter travels between stars and what stories those fragments might carry. Either way, Three-Eye Atlas invites us to contemplate our place not only in the solar system, but in the galaxy's vast unfolding. Perhaps the most meaningful lesson is not about aliens at all. It is about us, our curiosity, our fragile hope that we are not alone, our longing to understand the universe that shaped us. In studying this faint visitor, we reveal our own nature, a species that looks toward the unknown, not with fear, but with wonder. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved immediately. They are meant to be observed, held gently, allowed to breathe. 3 Atlas is one of those mysteries. Tonight the universe whispers again, and for a moment, brief, quiet and beautiful, we listen. The more we sit with this quiet visitor, the more its presence shifts from an astronomical event into something more reflective, almost intimate. After recognizing that Three-Eye Atlas does not belong to the Sun's original family, a softer question naturally rises. What does it mean, traveller, when something uninvited yet unharming drifts into our celestial home with such quiet confidence? Not as a warning, not as a spectacle, but as a reminder that the universe often moves according to patterns we have not yet learned to read. Here in the dim hours when observatories hum like distant beehives, astronomers often speak of perspective as if it were a physical force, something that bends the mind just as gravity bends light. And this object, whatever its origin, carries with it a curvature of perspective. It reminds us that the solar system is not a sealed chamber, but a crossroads, a landscape through which countless unknown travellers may pass without ever announcing themselves. Its motion is the first whisper. At a speed of 61 kilometers per second, it glides through interplanetary space with the serenity of something that has travelled far longer than humanity has existed. For human-made spacecraft, such velocity demands elaborate manoeuvres, slingshots, burns, calculations stacked upon calculations. But this object arrives already in motion, already shaped by centuries or millennia of wandering. To its speed is not a destination, it is a memory. And then there is the improbable geometry of its path. A natural object falling through the galaxy does not choose its route, yet the line this traveller traces almost seems drawn with intention. It brushes close to 3 planets, as if conducting a slow survey, a drifting cartographer mapping coastlines of gravity. Statistically, the odds are so slight that even calling them unlikely feels insufficient. But the universe has never promised to behave according to our expectations. Sometimes the rarest configurations are simply the ones we notice most. Still, the mind lingers on that strangeness. When something crosses the solar system with such precision, we cannot help but wonder whether the precision belongs to the object or to us. Whether we are projecting meaning onto coincidence, whether curiosity itself becomes a lens that sharpens every anomaly until it appears deliberate. Yet this too is natural. Humans are pattern seekers drifting within a universe where patterns sometimes emerge out of nothing more than gravity and chance. Its faint exhalations, the gases that trail from its surface, offer another layer of quiet intrigue. Most icy travellers shed their materials enthusiastically as sunlight warms them. But this one releases only the faintest breath, as if mindful of how much it reveals. The composition of that breath is unusual, not the familiar mix expected from comets, born in newborn stars, but something simpler, cleaner, more restrained. It is tempting to ascribe intention to this restraint, yet silence is also a language nature speaks fluently. A comet can be quiet without being controlled. Observers have noted subtle deviations in its trajectory movements that seem to drift sideways against pure gravitational prediction. Perhaps these are only the results of uneven heating, small jets of vapour nudging it gently. Perhaps they are something else, a sign of deeper processes we do not yet understand. But here in the soft boundaries between data and interpretation, it becomes important to remain calm. Not every deviation is a signal. Not every anomaly must become a narrative. Some movements are simply the universe stretching. And yet as we watch it move, we cannot help but imagine what it has seen. For an object to cross interstellar space is to pass through regions where magnetic fields ripple like invisible tides, where the dust between stars glows faintly under the pressure of cosmic rays, where radiation hums with a frequency older than any planet. Perhaps this traveller carries traces of those journeys in ways we cannot detect, not as messages, but as scars or memories embedded in its minerals. When humans look up at such an object, another question inevitably forms: why now? Why, during the one sliver of cosmic time in which our species exists with telescopes ready and minds awake? The coincidence is striking, yet coincidence is the universe's most common expression. Stars explode without waiting for witnesses. Comets fall inward regardless of who sees them. The cosmos does not time its events for us, though it sometimes feels as though it does. Yet the timing opens emotional space. It invites reflection. If we are being observed by chance, by nature, or by something more, what would the observer see? A species in transition learning to interpret starlight. A planet alive with voices, technologies, and conflicts that appear both insignificant and extraordinary when seen from afar. A civilization that still struggles to understand itself, even as it begins to understand the cosmos. Perhaps this is the quiet gift of such a visitor. Not revelation, but perspective. Not answers, but a broader frame for our questions. Because whether this object is a wandering remnant of ancient planetary debris or something far more intentional, it reminds us that we exist within a universe capable of sending visitors, capable of connecting distant worlds not through communication but through simple gravitational coincidence. And in that coincidence there is poetry. The kind that stirs without frightening, that expands without overwhelming. We need not resolve its mysteries tonight. We need only breathe with them, letting their uncertainty soften our thoughts, letting curiosity settle like a thin layer of stardust. It's all right to not understand. Tonight the stars will keep their silence, and as you rest, traveller, the cosmos will keep watch. As the object continues its silent passage inward, something subtle begins to change in us as observers. In the early days we watched it the way we watch any new discovery, with curiosity, with excitement, with the thrill of novelty. But as the weeks passed and the trajectory held and the faint chemical signatures continued to defy our expectations, the tone shifted. Curiosity turned into reflection. Reflection turned into something quieter, more contemplative, almost a kind of listening. Because there comes a moment, traveller, when a mystery grows so large that it no longer feels like something outside of us. It begins to shape the space within us. Atlas does this, not through spectacle nor through fear, but through the gentle insistence of its presence. It asks nothing. It announces nothing. And yet its silence ripples through our sense of place in ways even data cannot fully measure. We often imagine the universe as a wilderness of vast unbroken solitude of rock, ice, radiation and dark matter. But the presence of something from beyond our sun complicates that picture. It suggests movement, where we assumed stillness exchange, where we assumed isolation. Stars may be separated by unimaginable distances, yet matter travels between them. Ideas travel, light travels, perhaps even intentions travel. What changes then when one such traveller passes near us? Not the planets, not the orbits, not the tides or seasons. What changes is the human mind, the awareness that somewhere far beyond the faint halo of our heliosphere, something launched this wanderer or nudged it or simply released it into the currents of the galaxy. Whatever the cause, we are now connected to another place, another time, another story, and that connection carries weight. Scientists have noted that the dust surrounding the object behaves oddly, not chaotic like most cometary comas, but too evenly distributed, as if shaped by processes we have yet to model. It does not glow with the usual signatures of carbon chain molecules, nor with the faint organic fingerprints associated with primordial ices. Instead, its light appears controlled, a thin veil rather than a shedding. Some call this an anomaly, others call it an artifact of incomplete data. But the mind, sensitive to patterns, senses something else: restraint, a subtle order, a quiet boundary between what is revealed and what remains hidden. Then there is the size question. Observations hint that the nucleus may be larger than expected, or perhaps structured in ways that distort brightness estimates. It might be a fragment. It might be a single body. It might be multiple bodies moving together with such cohesion that they appear as one. Each possibility opens a new corridor of thought, and each corridor leads farther into the unknown. Yet none of these uncertainties stir panic. Instead, they create a kind of calm distance, the same feeling one gets when studying a map of a continent never visited. You know it exists, you know it is real, but its reality remains suspended, waiting for the moment when presence becomes experience. What makes Atlas exceptional is not the threat it poses, because it poses none but the mirror it holds up to us. When we speculate about its purpose, its origin, its design, we reveal more about our fears, our hopes, our assumptions about intelligence and loneliness. We reveal what we think life elsewhere might value, what paths it might choose, what observations it might seek. We reveal the stories we tell ourselves about the cosmos and our place within it, and perhaps that is the quiet teaching this object brings, that the universe is not solely a place to be measured, but a place to be understood in layered ways, scientific, emotional, philosophical, and even dreamlike. Data tells us how fast it moves, what gases rise from its surface, how gravity shapes its path. But meaning emerges from the spaces between those facts, from the way our minds drift across them like light across water. In that drift, we begin to sense how small we are, but also how remarkable it is that we can wonder at all. No other species on Earth builds telescopes to chase questions across light years. No other species feels compelled to interpret the silence of interstellar visitors as something personal. Our curiosity is not just a tool, it is a form of connection, a bridge cast toward the unknown, quietly hoping for resonance. Imagine, traveller, that somewhere far from here, another observer once looked up at their night sky and watched this same object drifting away from their world. Perhaps they wondered about its path, its composition, its strange, quiet propulsion. Perhaps they speculated that it might one day pass near a distant star with planets of its own. Perhaps they felt the same mix of insignificance and awe that we feel now. If that is true, then our experience becomes part of a chain, a sequence of contemplations scattered across systems we will never see. A thread linking civilizations, not through communication, but through shared encounter with the same wandering fragment of time and matter. And if Atlas is natural, that chain still exists. If Atlas is artificial, the chain becomes even more profound. But in either case, the object becomes a vessel for reflection, a reminder that existence is not confined to the orbits we see, but extends into histories we can barely imagine. As its path carries it deeper toward the sun and soon into the temporary blindness of solar glare, we find ourselves entering a different phase of observation, a phase defined not by what we can see, but by what we must wait to see. Waiting is a kind of listening, a patient attentiveness, a willingness to let the universe reveal itself in its own time. And in that waiting, something settles, a quiet acceptance, a gentle widening of thought. Whatever Atlas is, whatever story it carries, it is moving as it must, and so are we. As the days pass and the object drifts closer to the inner regions of the solar system, something curious begins to unfold, not in the sky, but in us. We start to notice how easily a single wandering fragment can rearrange the architecture of our thoughts. What began as an astronomical anomaly now moves through our minds like a gentle tide, reshaping the shoreline of our understanding. It is not the object that changes, but our way of seeing. There is a moment in every long night of observation when the instruments fall quiet, while data compiles, and the astronomer, freed from numbers, simply stares out the window at the stars. In that stillness, a strange sensation arises, the awareness that the universe is not passive. It is not merely a stage upon which matter drifts. It is active in its silence, expressive in its patterns, conversational in ways we cannot yet translate. And sometimes its conversation arrives in the form of a visitor whose origin we cannot name. Atlas continues its approach without drama. It does not brighten with urgency or flare with theatrical brilliance. Instead, it dims and brightens in slow, seasonal breaths, like something entrusting its story to those willing to wait. As it falls toward the sun, tiny adjustments continue to appear in its trajectory, Scientists debate them with admirable rigour whether they are caused by directional outgassing or symmetrical heating, or something more complex. Yet the subtlety of the deviation almost seems to resist certainty, as though the object prefers to remain partially unread. At times, its behaviour feels like a reminder that nature often hides its most profound mechanisms behind patterns that look deceptively simple. At other times, it feels like a riddle, one not meant to be solved but to be pondered. In that pondering, we learn not just about the cosmos, but about our own need for explanation, our discomfort with ambiguity, our tendency to search for intention where none may exist. And yet our instincts to question, to wonder, to reach beyond the obvious, these are not flaws. They are signs of consciousness reaching outward. What fascinates many researchers is the timeline. This visitor did not appear during the early days of telescopes when our technology was too weak to notice its subtleties. Nor did it arrive thousands of years ago when myth could have swallowed it whole. It appeared now during the brief and extraordinary window in which humanity has both the instruments to detect an interstellar object and the humility to recognize how little we understand. If we had been born 1,000 years earlier or later, we might have missed it entirely. Some find meaning in that timing, though. Meaning is delicate here, easily bent by wishful thinking, easily distorted by fear or hope. But perhaps meaning need not be supernatural or intentional. Perhaps meaning simply comes from participation. We are here alive, conscious, witnessing something rare. The universe does not choreograph for us, yet we still find ourselves at the right place in the right moment to watch this faint visitor glide through our celestial neighbourhood. The mind returns to the object's composition, its silence, its restraint, its chemical quietness. A typical comet behaves like a pilgrim returning to the warmth of the sun, melting, shedding, revealing its interior through streams of vapour and light. But Atlas behaves as though it has already made peace with the sun's presence, offering no dramatic spectacle, only a thin, disciplined halo of gas. Its reluctance to shed tells a story perhaps of a hardened surface, perhaps of unusual materials, perhaps of long cold ages drifting between stars where only the most robust structures endure. Every hour of observation adds complexity, not clarity. The more we study, the more the object seems to inhabit the narrow space between categories. Too active to be a dry asteroid, too restrained to be a typical comet, too precisely angled to be random debris, too quiet to be confidently labelled artificial. It resists classification the way a poem resists being reduced to a summary. It is what it is, and part of its truth lies in its refusal to simplify. As its solar approach near something profound settles into the collective awareness of those who watch it. We realise that objects like this, regardless of their nature, are reminders of how open the universe truly is. We imagine the solar system as the central setting of our cosmic story, but in reality, it is only a single eddy in a much larger ocean. Travellers pass through, currents cross, paths intersect for reasons that are not personal, not prophetic, simply cosmological. And yet the encounter becomes personal, because we are the ones who notice it. There is a quiet beauty in that. The object may not care that we observe it, but our observation still matters, not to it, but to us. It enriches our sense of scale, stretches our imagination, humbles our assumptions. It softens the boundaries between the familiar and the unknown. Soon it will slip behind the sun, becoming invisible to our telescopes. A kind of temporary eclipse will swallow it, and for several weeks we will know it exists without being able to track it. That disappearance feels symbolic in a way, as if the universe is gently asking us to practice patience, to sit with uncertainty, to learn to listen even when sight is removed, and that more than anything may be the quiet teaching of this visitor that not all understanding comes from seeing. Some comes from waiting, some comes from accepting what cannot yet be explained. Some comes from simply being present in the unfolding of a cosmic moment. The object continues its path, and we continue ours. Two travellers moving through the same momentary intersection of space and time. There is a certain kind of quiet that settles over an observatory in the early morning hours, when the night has nearly burned itself out, but the world has not yet awakened. It is in that quiet that astronomers often do their most honest thinking. No deadlines, no diagrams, no crowded simulations, only the soft hum of machines and the lingering glow of numbers on a screen. And somewhere far beyond that silence, a visitor continues its slow arc through space, indifferent to the thoughts it inspires. As the object moves toward its hidden path behind the sun, analysts begin to notice subtle variations in the light curve, not enough to be dramatic, but enough to remind us that even in darkness the universe is never fully still. Tiny brightening events ripple through the data like faint breaths. Thermal signatures shift by degrees so small they hover at the threshold of certainty. Spectral lines fluctuate not with chaos, but with something like a rhythm that refuses to settle into clarity. It raises a quiet question, not whether the object is natural or artificial, but whether our desire to categorize it is simply the mind's attempt to impose borders on something that was never meant to be divided. Perhaps its value lies not in what it is, but in what it prompts us to notice that ambiguity is its own form of truth. Travelers of the cosmos are rarely simple. Even ordinary comets hold histories longer than our species has existed, frozen archives of other suns, other epochs, other gravitational embraces. This one, however, carries an atmosphere of difference. Not menace, not promise. Just difference. Like a word spoken in a language we almost understand. As its trajectory brings it closer to the inner solar system, its interaction with the solar wind becomes more noticeable. Charged particles slide across its surface like soft fingers peeling away dust grains and releasing faint ion trails. Nothing unusual, and yet somehow everything about it feels slightly out of place. Not wrong, simply unexpected. Its coma remains thin, disciplined, as though releasing only what it chooses, never more. Observers compare data sets spanning months, overlaying one observation atop another, searching for patterns. They find slight oscillations in brightness, at intervals that remain statistically ambiguous, not enough to declare periodicity, not enough to dismiss. They find a slight symmetry in the coma's orientation, shifting not in perfect alignment with solar radiation pressure, but drifting in a manner that resembles attention rather than reaction. Perhaps that is projection. Humans are very good at reading intention into natural forces, but even projection can reveal something important that we long for dialogue with the universe, whether or not it speaks back. One night a researcher studying the object pauses between measurements and steps outside to breathe in the cold air. Above her the sky unfurls like an ancient tapestry woven with photons older than Earth. She thinks about the object not as a problem, but as a presence. Something that has touched places her mind can barely conceive. It has drifted through interstellar clouds dense enough to form stars. It has passed through voids so empty, a cubic kilometre contains only a few lonely atoms. It has survived collisions, heating, freezing the tucking influence of countless gravitational wells. When you consider all of that, its arrival here feels less like an event, and more like a continuation of a journey much older than humanity itself. There is a strange comfort in that. We often imagine ourselves as the centre of the narrative, but in truth, we are a brief flash of awareness in a cosmos almost entirely indifferent, yet immeasurably beautiful in its indifference. This object reminds us of that reality, not to diminish us, but to place us gently in the correct scale. And scale, after all, is one of astronomy's greatest teachers. Scientists begin modelling its future path after it emerges from behind the sun. Some projections show it brightening slightly as it begins its outbound trajectory. Others suggest it may fragment a common fate for visitors experiencing their first close pass near our star. Fragmentation is not failure. It is simply another stage of existence. Even celestial bodies have life cycles. Some leave the solar system intact. Others dissolve into dust and ions, becoming part of the interplanetary medium, joining a river of particles that will eventually seed new structures elsewhere. If this visitor breaks apart, its remnants will drift for ages, following long arcs through the galaxy until gravity gathers them into new stories. There is serenity in that possibility. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is meaningless. Even disintegration becomes contribution. As the date of solar occlusion nears the object's final visible nights become unusually clear. For a brief window, atmospheric turbulence softens, allowing telescopes to capture its faint shape with unexpected precision. Yet clarity does not bring simplicity. The image remains unresolved, a small blur, elongated, slightly irregular around the edges, neither a sphere nor a shard. It resembles a memory more than a body. The astronomers watching it don't feel frustration. Instead, a kind of peace settles in. They understand now that the goal was never to decode it entirely. Some cosmic visitors are lessons, not answers. Some are mirrors held gently up to our assumptions, reflecting the quiet truth that the universe owes us no explanations. Far below the observatories, people who never look through telescopes still feel a subtle shift in the collective imagination. News spreads. Curiosity grows. Not fear, only wonder, the oldest companion of the human mind. Even those who know little about orbital mechanics sense that something rare is passing overhead even if they cannot see it. A silent traveller crossing paths with another silent traveller, the human species itself. In that shared awareness, something softens. For a moment, humanity is unified not by threat or urgency, but by curiosity. A fragile alignment, yet beautiful in its fragility. Soon the visitor will slip behind the sun, hidden from every eye on Earth. The sky will offer no updates, no clues, only waiting. And waiting too is part of science, a discipline of patience stitched into the fabric of discovery. Tonight that patience feels gentle. Tonight the universe whispers again. By the time the object disappears into the sun's glare, the world below feels strangely quieter, as though something in the collective mind is holding its breath. Without fresh data, astronomers return to old measurements, revisiting light curves and spectrograms, with the tenderness of someone rereading a beloved letter. Patterns that once seemed definitive soften into possibilities. Certainties dissolve into gentle maybes. And in that dissolution, a deeper kind of clarity begins to form, not about the object itself, but about the nature of our inquiry. The silence that follows its disappearance is not empty. It is the kind of silence you find inside a long corridor of a radio observatory at night, humming with memory, heavy with anticipation. Observers sit before dim screens running simulations whose results drift like dust motes in sunlight. Each model branches into hundreds of futures, none of them entirely persuasive, all of them strangely beautiful. Some forecasts predict a brightening when the visitor emerges, a small surge of reflected sunlight caused by changes in its rotation or surface texture. Others suggest a fading, as if the object will return to view, diminished quieter, or altered by solar heating. A few simulations show fragmentations, not catastrophic, but elegant, like petals coming loose from a flower and drifting separately into the solar wind. And yet there is an odd tenderness in the idea that celestial bodies too can change under the warmth of a star. Nothing escapes transformation in this universe, not comets, not planets, not civilizations, not even the faint hopes we place upon distant travellers. Change, after all, is the one force that binds the cosmos into continuity. Down on Earth, nights pass, the object remains hidden. But the absence itself becomes an observation. Astronomers study the gap, the silence, the unchanged positions of background stars. They refine ephemerides. They calculate boundaries of uncertainty so narrow they resemble the width of a human hair at planetary distances. In this precision there is humility, because no matter how finely one measures, there are always whispers of randomness beneath the numbers. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Meanwhile, researchers from different fields begin to converge on the same questions from different angles. Planetary scientists examine the object's chemical fingerprints, hoping to reconstruct the conditions of the place it came from. Astrophysicists attempt to map its trajectory backward through the galaxy, searching for a cradle among the dense star fields of the Milky Way. Statisticians analyse the unlikeliness of its close planetary passages. Philosophers write quietly about the implications of cosmic arrival. Each discipline contributes a fragment like shards of glass laid out on a table, none revealing the whole image, all glinting with meaning. This is how knowledge expands, not through revelation, but through the slow accumulation of careful wonder. In the absence of new observations, some researchers turn inward, reflecting not on the object, but on our relationship with the unknown. What does it mean, they wonder, that humanity feels drawn toward mysteries in the sky? Why do we yearn for meaning in an object that may simply be following an ancient orbit shaped long before our species existed? And why does the idea of being noticed by the universe, even briefly, even accidentally, awaken something so deep within us? Perhaps the answer is simple. When we study distant visitors, we are also studying ourselves. The cosmos becomes a mirror held at incomprehensible distance. reflecting not our features but our questions. Traveller. There is something profoundly human in the way we gaze into darkness and ask it to speak. Weeks pass, the object remains hidden behind the sun, but space weather detectors pick up subtle fluctuations in solar particles, tiny perturbations that might mean everything or nothing. Observers catalogue them anyway. Quiet science is built on the willingness to record even the faintest possibilities without clinging to them. Somewhere a graduate student working late overlays solar wind data from 2 separate spacecraft and notices a slight dip in charged particle density, a signature so faint it barely rises above noise. She marks it with a question mark, knowing it will likely amount to nothing. Yet something in the way it aligns with predicted outgassing windows gives her pause. It is not confirmation. It is not discovery. But it is a reminder that even in absence, the universe continues to behave like a living phenomenon. It's all right to not understand. Far away on another night, an astronomer steps outside during a break and looks up at a sky washed clean by winter air. The stars shimmer with that crystalline sharpness only seen in the coldest months. He thinks of the hidden visitor, how it travels without expectation, how it neither seeks nor resists observation. He realizes that the object is teaching a quiet lesson, that significance does not require intention, that anomalous paths can still be natural, that rarity is not a synonym for purpose. In that realization, he feels something settle in his chest, a release, a loosening of the human need to interpret every deviation as design. He stands there for several minutes, letting the cold sink into his bones, letting the sky remind him that existence is enough, meaning can be optional. When the moment passes, he returns inside, refreshed in the way only cosmic silence can refresh a mind. As the date of the object's reappearance approaches, anticipation builds softly like the hush before dawn. Telescopes recalibrate. Observation windows are scheduled with care. Instruments are cooled to optimal temperatures. There is no rush, only readiness. Science is patient, and patience is its own kind of devotion. Soon Traveller the object will emerge again, sliding out from the sun's brilliant curtain. It may reveal something new, or nothing new at all. Both outcomes are gifts. Because the purpose of observing the universe is not to demand answers, but to witness its unfolding with humility. Tonight the stars will keep their silence, and that too is a form of truth. When the object finally clears the sun's blinding rim, its return feels quieter than anyone expected. There is no dramatic brightening, no sudden flare, no revelation waiting like a secret. Instead, it appears almost shy. Its light softened its edges, blurred by distance, as though some part of its identity was left behind in the furnace of perihelion. The first telescopic images show a visitor slightly changed but still unmistakably itself, gliding outward with the same patient confidence it carried inward. Observers lean over their screens in the dim glow of early morning, letting their eyes adjust to the faint reappearance. After weeks of waiting, the simplicity of the moment feels strangely profound. It is like greeting an old friend whose presence needs no explanation. No one speaks for several beats. Sometimes silence is the only appropriate response to the universe's steadiness. Spectral instruments pick up the object's reflected sunlight, passing it into thin, delicate lines. There are hints, small ones, of surface alteration, a slight change in albedo, a subtle shift in dust content. The thermal signature has cooled unevenly, as though certain regions absorbed and released heat in patterns that do not fully match typical cometry expectations. Yet nothing is definitive enough to claim anomaly. It all falls into that familiar space between known and unknown, the frontier that science inhabits like a quiet home. Traveller, it is in this frontier that curiosity becomes gentleness. Data arrives in soft intervals, a minor pulse in brightness, a small dip in rotational stability. The object wobbles slightly, then steadies itself. These motions could be caused by residual outgassing or by subtle adjustments to its tumbling cycle. Each explanation is plausible, none are complete. The cosmos rarely permits a single answer when a constellation of possibilities will do. Night by night, the object's movement begins to resemble a story told in slow motion, A turn here, a dimming there, the thin trace of a tail forming, dissolving, forming again. Every shift is a sentence, every fragment of light is a word, yet the story remains open-ended like an ancient manuscript with missing pages. Researchers begin calculating its long outbound arc. The object will make no return visit within any timescale meaningful to humanity. It will slip beyond Mars's orbit, beyond Jupiter's distant cold, and then out toward the sea of interstellar space where gravity weakens into mere suggestion, and time becomes an ocean without shore. This knowledge brings with it a soft ache, not sadness, something gentler. The awareness that beauty often passes us only once, reminding us that witnessing is itself an act of meaning. In observatories across the world, scientists make the same small gesture, leaning back in their chairs, eyes unfocused for a moment, letting the scale of it all settle in. A visitor from another star system, older than human civilization, older than our languages, older than our earliest questions, has crossed our neighbourhood, shared a brief sliver of its journey, and will soon disappear into a darkness we can only imagine. One astronomer working alone in the quiet hours before dawn opens her notebook and writes a simple line. Somewhere beyond our reach, something ancient still moves. She does not write it as a conclusion or as evidence or as theory. She writes it as a feeling. And science, despite its equations, is full of feelings too. Feelings that arise when the cosmos reminds us of our smallness in the gentlest possible way. As the object continues outward, photon by photon, new measurements reveal a slow stabilization in its rotation. The odd pauses, noted earlier, soften into a smoother pattern. Dust release decreases. The coma thins to a faint haze barely detectable. It is as though the object is settling back into itself, returning to the form it has held for millennia, untouched by the curiosity of a distant species observing from a single, pale world. Yet even in this settling there is something slightly different, a kind of quiet resilience. Visitors from deep space often shed material fracture, or brighten dramatically after such intense heating. This one does not. It remains subdued, steady, almost reserved. It behaves like something accustomed to surviving long journeys. The data flows in, images sharpen, spectra align. But the mystery remains untouched, as steady as a star's heartbeat. Somewhere a group of students gathers around a computer in a dim lecture hall, watching the object's reappearance with the kind of reverence usually reserved for eclipses. They speak softly without intending to, or lowers the volume of human speech. One of them whispers, "It's strange how something can feel alive without being alive." No one corrects him. The universe often blurs such boundaries. Meanwhile, the broader public begins to lose interest. Headlines fade, stories drift downward on news feeds. The world returns to its daily rhythms. But for those who watch the sky with patience, the object continues to be a quiet companion, a reminder that the universe is vast enough to hold wonders that do not demand attention. There is a serenity in that. Not every visitor arrives with meaning. Some simply pass by, offering us the gift of perspective. As its distance grows, the object's brightness diminishes to a pale glimmer. It is almost gone now, not in reality but in visibility. It remains itself unchanged by whether we look or not. The cosmos does not require an audience, but humanity in its tender curiosity looks anyway. And in looking, we learn something not about the object but about ourselves. Tonight the universe whispers again. Sleep now, observer. The cosmos will keep watch. When the visitor settles into the long outward leg of its journey, something gentle shifts in the rhythm of observation. The early urgency softens, the measurements slow. The silence grows wide around it like a lake at dawn holding the reflection of a star. By now the object is no longer a figure of speculation or anxiety. It has become a companion of sorts, drifting farther each night, yet leaving behind a presence that remains. Its brightness stabilizes into a faint, steady glow. No dramatic flares, no sudden dimming, only the slow cooling of a body that has endured the sun's intensity and now drifts through the soft decline of heliocentric heat. Observers note that the thermal gradient across its surface has begun to even out, smoothing the slight distortions caused by earlier heating. The coma once whispering around it like a breath thins almost to nothing. Only the most sensitive instruments detect its residue. Yet the object's quiet reveals something unexpected, a delicate persistence. Many visitors fragment after their first close encounter with the sun. This one does not. Instead, it appears calmer now, as if long voyages have taught it the art of endurance. Astronomers adjust their telescopes to track its motion as it glides across a background of stars older than human language. The path is precise, unhurried, steady as a heartbeat. Each observation window brings another trace of data, tiny points, faint streaks of reflected sunlight measurements. Fragile enough to vanish if the atmosphere trembles even slightly. Still, the observers persist. They know these small pieces form the quiet architecture of understanding. A researcher in South America listens to her instruments hum through the night. She watches the familiar curves appear on her screen, curves she could draw from memory now. Something in them comforts her. They are predictable, trustworthy calm. In a world that rushes forward with relentless noise, the cosmos offers her a different tempo. Slow, patient, contemplative. She leans back in her chair and allows the data to wash over her, not as information but as atmosphere. Sometimes scientific work becomes a kind of breathing. Farther north, at a high-altitude station where winds howl like old memories, an astronomer steps outside between measurements. The horizon glows faintly with the fading trace of twilight. He looks upward, searching not for the visitor, but for the feeling it first gave him the awareness that the universe is broader than thought, older than questions, deeper than expectation. That feeling returns in waves, soft and steady, and for a moment he forgets the cold. The object continues outward. As it transitions into a region where the solar wind becomes thinner, its behaviour changes again, though not dramatically. Small dust grains drift from its surface, carried by gentle radiation pressure. These particles scatter sunlight into thin, shimmering arcs, too faint for the naked eye, but traceable by instruments tuned to the slightest variations in luminosity. Some researchers call these arcs ghost signatures, not because they imply anything supernatural, but because they appear and vanish like passing spirits, impossible to hold yet undeniably real. In this stage of the journey, the visitor reveals something profound that even as it fades, it leaves a record behind a soft geological story written in dust. Modelers run simulations to predict how these particles disperse. They find patterns reminiscent of old cometary debris streams, yet not identical. The density is lower, the angular distribution slightly irregular. It is as though the object releases material not from fractures or jets, but from a more subtle process sublimation, shaped by centuries of interstellar cold awakening, gradually under the sun's distant warmth. One scientist describes it as a memory being exhaled. Another calls it a star's long-forgotten whisper. Neither phrase appears in a formal paper, but both remain scribbled in notebooks, a reminder that science is as much poetry as precision. Meanwhile, as the visitor drifts outward, a strange paradox settles into the minds of those watching. The farther it moves away, the more present it becomes in their thoughts. It is no longer merely an object. It is an idea about distance, about time, about the fleeting nature of encounters. It represents the truth that some things appear in our lives for only a moment, leaving us changed even as they vanish. Even the public, though mostly turning their attention elsewhere, retains a faint awareness of the story. A teacher mentions it to her students during a lesson on astronomy. A poet writes a short verse about a wanderer from between the stars. A child asks their parent whether the visitor will ever come back. The parent, unsure, answers softly, "Not in any time we will see." The child accepts the answer with the innocence of someone who does not yet fear impermanence. As the object reaches a new distance, its apparent size shrinks to a point so small that instruments must work harder to separate it from background noise. But still it remains detectable, a tiny beacon receding into depth. Observers schedule fewer sessions, now not out of disinterest but out of respect for the object's fading visibility. It feels almost like saying goodbye. Yet goodbyes in astronomy are gentle. They are not endings. They are acknowledgements that the universe moves at a pace far beyond human years, that paths cross briefly, beautifully, then diverge into distances we cannot accompany. One night after logging the final observation of the season, an astronomer closes her notebook and sits quietly beside the telescope. She thinks about how this visitor will continue travelling perhaps for millions of years, perhaps toward places humanity will never reach. And yet, for a brief moment in cosmic time, its journey intersected with ours. She whispers to the empty dome, wherever you go, "May the stars remember you." The sky offers no reply. It never needs to. Tonight, traveller, the universe breathes softly. Tonight, the silence carries everything. By now, the visitor has travelled far enough that the sun's warmth feels more like a distant memory than an active presence. Its surface cools into equilibrium, shedding the last remnants of thermal agitation. What remains is a quiet, steady glow, faint, almost shy, yet unmistakably persistent. Telescopes must stretch their sensitivity to capture it. Observers lengthen their exposure times, stacking layer upon layer of light until the object emerges again from the noise like a whisper heard through snow. No one is chasing revelations anymore. Curiosity has settled into companionship, the kind shared between travellers who walk the same path not because they must, but because their journeys overlapped for a brief and beautiful moment. The visitor's story is no longer confined to calculations and models, it has become something softer, something remembered. Its light curve now shows a gentle stability. The earlier irregularities smooth out as the object drifts farther from solar perturbations. Even its rotation seems calmer, as though the turbulence of perihelion has faded into a long, peaceful glide. There is a stillness in its motion, a kind of cosmic exhale. Scientists watching from screens feel that same exhale ripple through their own bodies. They too are settling into the rhythm of distance. Every new measurement is a reminder of how small humanity is and how wondrously patient the universe remains. A team in Japan uses one of the world's most precise spectrographs to capture the faintest trace of reflected sunlight. The spectrum is soft, faint, barely more than a ripple carved into darkness. Yet it reveals something subtle. The object's surface has cooled enough that volatile compounds are no longer escaping. The last breath of sublimation active near perihelion is gone now. All that remains is dust, rock, and memory. One researcher remarks quietly, "It has gone back to sleep." Another answers, "Or perhaps it was never awake. Perhaps we were the ones awakened." Their voices remain low, almost reverent. In late-night labs, science often sounds like prayer. Meanwhile, orbital simulations stretch outward far beyond the solar system. They trace the probable path the object will take once it escapes the sun's gravity well. Some trajectories show it drifting toward a sparse region of interstellar space. Others suggest it may one day pass within a few light years of another star, engaging in the silent gravitational ballet that has guided it for millions of years already. No one knows for certain. Uncertainty is the native language of long time scales. But the object's future, whatever it may be, will unfold without witnesses. Its next encounter with a living mind may be millions of years away, or never. This realization brings an ache, not sorrow, but something deeper. The awareness that human observation is a rare form of light and the universe seldom receives it. A graduate student in Europe writes in her notebook, "We were here for one of its moments. That is enough." She draws a small sketch of a comet-shaped blur and writes beneath it, "It will forget us. But we will remember it. The perspective feels right. Humans are the archivists, the ones who record the ones who care. The cosmos moves on. And yet the act of caring is not insignificant. It is the way human consciousness reaches outward, shaping meaning from the cold geometry of space." As the visitor recedes, observations decrease. Fewer telescopes track it. Fewer discussions orbit around it in halls and conferences. The world's attention has shifted back to its familiar concerns. But a quiet ring of astronomers and enthusiasts continues to watch night after night, letting their instruments drink in the faintest photons from the traveller's diminishing glow. One astronomer in the Atacama Desert steps outside after his final observation of the night. The sky above him burns with clarity, the stars so sharp they seem etched into the black. He looks toward the region where the visitor now drifts invisible to the naked eye, and something in him softens. He thinks about how small changes in gravity accumulated over millions of years led the object here. The improbable chain of interactions, the threads of chance woven across light years, the ancient collisions and quiet rearrangements that sculpted its existence long before Earth held oceans or continents or thought. He whispers into the desert air, "Thank you for passing this way." The universe answers with wind. Back in the northern hemisphere, another observer writes a short reflection in the margins of her datasheet. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to accompany us. She closes her notebook gently as though afraid of waking something sleeping inside it. What surprises many scientists is not how much they learned, but how much they learned to let go of. Before the perihelion passage, there was expectation, a hunger for clarity. Afterward, there is acceptance. The universe does not perform for us, does not explain itself on command. Sometimes it simply presents a question and invites us to sit with it, and sitting with the question becomes the work. Weeks pass. The visitor dims until it appears only in long exposure composites. A few observatories continue tracking it, but most no longer can. Its surface reflects too little sunlight. Its distance grows too great. Soon it becomes a dot, then a half dot, then a hint, then an idea, and then eventually a memory. But even memories have trajectories. Conversations about the visitor linger in unexpected places, a late-night cafe where two students debate the nature of interstellar objects, a science classroom where a teacher shows a faint telescope image, an astronomy club where a retired engineer describes how he sat in his backyard for hours, just imagining the object's path. In these quiet corners, the visitor lives on, not in brightness, but in wonder. And wonder has always been the true fuel of scientific thought. One might assume that astronomers feel disappointment as the object fades. Yet what they feel is something gentler, a gratitude for having witnessed a piece of the galaxy's past drift through the sunlit spaces of our present. The gratitude deepens as they realize that the object is not gone. It is simply returning to the realm from which it came, carrying with it starlight dust and the echoes of every gravitational encounter it has ever known. A young researcher closing down her instruments for the night writes a final note. Maybe the universe speaks not in answers but in arrivals and departures. She closes her eyes for a moment, listening to the stillness. Tonight the universe whispers again, and in its whisper is an invitation to rest, to reflect, to accept the unknown with gentle hands. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos remembers your curiosity. When the visitor finally drifts beyond the reach of even the most powerful telescopes, a quiet calm settles over the scientific community that had followed its path for months. Its departure is not marked by any dramatic brightening or sudden final flare. There is no last message, no signature, no revelation waiting at the edge of visibility. It simply fades gradually and silently, until even long exposure images reveal nothing more than the familiar grain of interstellar dust. In this unceremonious disappearance, something profound becomes clear. The object is no longer something we can observe, but something we now carry within us. In the days after the final detection, astronomers archive graphs, spectra, images and notes, ordinary products of scientific work. Yet as they scroll through these datasets, they sense a softness beneath the numbers. Each line, each curve feels like a memory captured on starlight. They recall nights filled with hushed voices, the hum of cooling systems, and the small thrill that comes from watching the universe reveal itself one photon at a time. What once felt like a chase for answers has become unexpectedly a meditation on presence. A researcher studying the last available spectra pauses at a faint carbon dioxide line, one of the earliest clear signatures. She zooms in, examines the tiny curve and smiles, not because the line contains some hidden revelation, but because the act of looking has changed her. She writes in the margin of her notebook, "Data's never just data. It is the residue of a moment when the universe allowed us to look back. In that simple reflection lies the essence of cosmic inquiry. Science is not only about discovery, but about learning to see." Elsewhere, a student plots the visitor's predicted escape trajectory. The line arcs gently through the solar system, before slipping into the deep interstellar dark with the ease of an exhale. He imagines the silence awaiting the traveller, the unimaginable distances it will cross, and wonders how many such objects wander the galaxy completely unnoticed. He feels a quiet humility rising within him. the recognition that human attention is a rare form of illumination, and that most cosmic stories unfold in darkness without witness. These reflections echo through observatories, lecture halls, and quiet corners of the scientific world. They are not heavy questions, nor are they urgent. They linger like the fading resonance of a bell. And yet life moves on. Students continue studying. Researchers return to new projects. The world shifts back into its familiar rhythm. Still, for those who watched the visitor approach and retreat, the night sky seems somehow altered, wider, more intimate, more alive. One evening, an astronomer stands alone outside an observatory dome long after the instruments have been powered down. Above her, the Milky Way spills across the black like a frozen river. She closes her eyes and imagines the visitor now far beyond Mars's orbit, gliding toward the distant frontier of the solar system. She imagines its surface cooling to near absolute zero, its tail fully dissipated, its motion smooth and unhurried. She whispers into the dark, safe travel's friend, and the night accepts her words with a silence that feels almost tender. Across the world, people who heard fragments of the story feel faint echoes of the same sentiment. Some feel gratitude, others feel wonder. A few feel the bittersweet ache of something fleeting and beautiful. Yet what unites them is a shared recognition that the visitor reminded humanity of something long forgotten, that the universe is not empty, but full of quiet movement, full of ancient wanderers that pass near us, without intention or design, simply following the paths carved by time and gravity. Scientists gather one final time to discuss the project. There is no revelation waiting for them, no consensus, no definitive classification. Instead, they share reflections on what the object meant, how its anomalous trajectory inspired new lines of research, how its silence encouraged patience, how months spent watching a faint point of light softened their approach to uncertainty. One researcher says, "It reminded us that we are not alone, not because someone is out there, but because the universe itself is company." Another answers, "And because we look together." A gentle stillness follows warm rather than empty. Meanwhile, the visitor continues outward, crossing boundaries of gravitational influence without ceremony. It moves into regions where the sun becomes just another star. There is no drama in this transition, only the quiet return to the dark interstellar ocean from which it once came. Its temperature drops, its surface freezes, its dust settles. Yet nothing in this coldness feels harsh. It is simply the way the universe rests. Millions of years from now, the visitor may wander near another star. It may warm again. It may glow faintly in another sky, igniting the curiosity of another civilization. Or it may remain unseen forever, drifting through the galaxy as a silent witness to cosmic time. Whether it is noticed again or not does not diminish its significance. Its meaning lies not in how many eyes observe it, but in the fact that for a brief moment it crossed paths with beings capable of wonder, and wonder lasts longer than visibility. For the astronomers who watched it, the sky will never feel quite the same. For the students inspired by it, the universe will always feel slightly closer. For the listeners who drifted to sleep under its story, there will always remain the sense that something ancient passed near us, once quiet, patient, and full of mystery. The visitor is gone from sight, but the awe it awakened remains. Tonight, traveller, as you rest beneath the same stars that guided its path, remember this: you are not lost in space, you are part of it, and the universe in its vast patience keeps gentle watch. Long after the visitor has vanished into interstellar night, its passage continues to ripple through the thoughts of those who observed it. The object itself is gone beyond detection, beyond measurement, beyond the reach of even the most sensitive instruments. Yet its absence feels strangely full, as though the space it once occupied still holds the shape of wonder. The universe is like that. It leaves impressions not only in gravity and dust, but in memory. Weeks turn into months. The observatories resume their usual programs, surveying near-Earth asteroids, mapping faint galaxies, scanning the sky for transient events. Life returns to normal, but the normalcy feels subtly altered. Where once the sky was a canvas of distant lights, it now feels like a record of paths crossings and silent encounters. Every point of light seems to hold a story. and every story feels connected to the one that just passed through. One evening, a graduate student sits alone in the observatory library flipping through old star catalogues. She pauses at an image from the visitor's early detection, nothing more than a faint streak across a background of stars. Yet she lingers as though looking at an old photograph of a friend. The streak is simple, almost forgettable, but she remembers the sense of discovery that accompanied it, the same feeling that now draws her deeper into the study of interstellar objects. She realizes that it was not the object's nature that changed her, but the act of paying attention. Attention she thinks is a form of devotion. In another part of the world, a retired astronomer rereads his handwritten logs. He traces the entries with a fingertip, recalling each night spent under cold domes, each moment of clarity, each interruption of cloud and wind. He remembers the silence shared between colleagues as they watched the data trickle in each photon, a message from something impossibly old. He smiles at the thought that a small distant object indifferent to observation could have brought so many people together in a quiet ceremony of curiosity. The visitor's legacy grows in gentle ways. A documentary is produced not dramatic but meditative, focusing on the human experience of watching something ancient approach and recede. In classrooms, students learn not only about orbital mechanics, but about the humility required to explore the cosmos. In small online communities, people share their own reflections, poems, sketches, brief notes about how the visitor reminded them of the vastness in which human life unfolds. None of these effects were intended by the object, of course, but intention is not required for meaning. As winter melts into spring, new observations begin to occupy the telescopes: a distant supernova, a faint exoplanet transit, a meteor shower glowing through a warm night, and yet each new discovery feels subtly connected to the one before it, as though the visitor opened a doorway not to knowledge, but to perspective. One astronomer walking home after a long shift considers this shift in perspective. When he first entered the field, he thought science was a ladder leading upward, the goal being to reach the highest rung of understanding. But now he sees it differently. Science is not a ladder but a landscape, a wide one full of horizons that move as you approach them. A place where answers open into deeper questions and where wonder is not the beginning of inquiry, but its continuation. The visitor taught him this not through signals, not through anomalies, not through revelations, but through its quietness. A child in a small town asks her parent whether the visitor will ever come back. The parent thinks for a moment and says softly, "Not in our lifetime, but maybe someday someone else will see it." The child accepts this without disappointment. For her, the idea that the universe holds travellers passing between stars is enough to ignite imagination. She will grow up with a sense of cosmic companionship. Humanity in its brief existence has always looked to the sky for meaning. Sometimes it finds patterns, sometimes it finds mysteries. Sometimes, as with this visitor, it finds a reminder that not everything must be known to be treasured. The object's journey is not a message. It is not a warning. It is not a sign. It is simply a path, one that happened to cross ours. And yet, the crossing matters. Late one night, a philosopher-astronomer writes a short reflection. Meaning is not inherent in the universe. It arises when consciousness encounters motion. He closes his journal, looks out the window, and sees the familiar spread of stars shimmering above. He feels no urgency to decipher them. Instead, he feels gratitude for the privilege of witnessing even a fraction of the cosmos. The visitor continues its long journey, now unseen and unmeasured, drifting between suns through depths colder than comprehension. But while it leaves no trail of light behind, it leaves something far more enduring within those who watched, a quiet invitation to look up, to wonder gently, and to remember that the universe is vast not in its threat but in its patience. In the end, the object vanishes into darkness, but the wonder it stirred becomes its lasting orbit, circling through human thought long after its light is gone. As our quiet exploration comes to a close, traveller, we find ourselves drifting at the gentle edge of a vast mystery. Together we have wandered through the possibilities surrounding 3i Atlas, tracing its silent arc through our solar system and imagining what its presence might mean for our small world. Whatever this interstellar visitor truly is, messenger remnant or simply a wanderer from another star, it leaves behind a rare and humbling awareness that even in a universe immeasurably large, wonder remains within reach. As it continues its eminent path into the dark beyond our sight, we are reminded how extraordinary it is that we are here at the precise moment its faint light brushed past Earth, and how quietly meaningful it becomes when consciousness meets the unknown. Mystery Listener is not emptiness. It is a presence, a soft illumination that deepens the way we breathe beneath the stars. And though our time with this cosmic traveller ends, the universe continues to unfold, whispering at distances we cannot yet fathom. So rest now with that awareness, knowing that curiosity is its own kind of light in the dark. Sleep well, observer. The cosmos will keep watch, and if this story found you tonight, you are welcome to return and drift a little farther into the silence.